Good afternoon, everyone. We're here for another Timer Tip Tuesday, our continuous education forum for everything race day with all of our tools. We'll give everybody just a minute to join, and then we'll dive right in. We have some good content today about relays and RaceJoy, but it's more than just RaceJoy. It's also race day scoring, so we'll be touching a little bit of that today. Okay, again, thank you so much for joining us in our continuous education program we call Timer Tip Tuesday. Today we're going to be looking at relays and RaceJoy, but it's a little bit deeper than that. We're also going to be looking at how the timing integration with race day scoring works with respect to doing relays and ultra relays and those types of courses. As always, we have people on the back end. Today we have Soren and Michael from development on the back end answering questions. So feel free to ask questions as we go through the material, and we can recap as we go or at the end. Again, thanks for joining us today. So the way I'm going to tackle this today is really looking at it from the mapping perspective first, because there is some different things that you have to do with the maps for relay processing is what we call it. And I'll be really kind of walking through that a little bit for just a normal type relays like marathon relays, and then also the ultra distance relays and some of the things that we've done. We've actually improved since the last time I did this webinar a few years ago. It's kind of interesting. I was going through the materials, and Michael and I have actually improved some of the mapping and how easy it is to set up the maps now, kind of improved like the configurations and all. So a lot of it has been automated, and I'll be demonstrating that today. So it makes it even more easier to set up these types of courses. And then from there, I'm going to move into a presentation about the timing integration for relays and how that works between race day scoring and RaceJoy with respect to relay courses. And there are some slight things to talk about with respect to timing integration. Again, as we've been training over this summer, you don't have to use race day scoring in order to score the race, in order to get timing integration and kind of that real-time tracking experience, what we call race day real-time. You don't have to use it for scoring. It's just literally a middleware piece that will stream the information from your equipment to RaceJoy and make all that experience happen for that real live tracking experience. And so I'll be covering that. And then finally today, I do want to speak about how things work in terms of your registration data with respect to relays and bibs and team names, and just making sure you have all the information about how team names and bibs and all work with respect to RaceJoy and also with the timing integration. So I'm going to first talk about the course mapping, and we're going to be looking at relay first, what I call like kind of a standard relay, like a marathon or half marathon relay, anything up to like the 50-mile kind of range. And then we're going to also spend some time speaking about ultra relays. So let me turn my camera off so I'm not keeping the focus on me and not on the good material. Okay, good. So this is going to be kind of show and tell. I like to keep things interactive. So I'm first going to cover some points, but then I'm going to jump out and actually do the work live so that you can kind of see that in terms of your training and kind of actually going through it and actually doing stuff. So it's typically how we like to do our webinars. So when it comes to setting up relays in RaceJoy, one of the first things that's often asked, and I want to cover right at the beginning, is can I use the alternate processing? It's the same course, the marathon and the marathon relay are running the same course. Why can't I just set it to alternate? And the reason why is because we offer what we call team progress and team management in RaceJoy for the relay. And this is a lot deeper than just a matter of just, you know, running on a course like a marathon course. We're actually tying a group of phones together into a team, and we're able to do team stats, team performance stats. We're able to give teams the ability to manage their legs and manage who's doing which leg and starting legs. And we're also able to let them set some manual overrides and stuff. And so there's a whole new area of RaceJoy that we developed over the years called relay and team management. And all that kind of processing is based upon you as a timer setting that processing type to relay. And so you do have to set up the map twice in order to do relays. And if you want assistance from our support team, they can copy things over. Sometimes when we get into like the ultra relays, you know, we have the solo option out there, 100-miler. It's a lot of work getting that course set up and everything, and you just kind of want to get everything set up maybe once and then have it all copied over and then add your exchange points. So again, we do have to have 2 courses loaded, but we can kind of assist you if it's something that you have to set up and you kind of don't have to do all that setup twice. But yeah, definitely need to have both the standard course and the relay, and you set the relay processing type to relay course as shown on the screen. When it comes to setting up a relay map, so again, we have to do that map twice. It's just a matter of just loading in your normal map. And then the only additional thing you have to do is you have to tell us about the exchange points. So it's just an easy add of exchange points that's being demonstrated here, and I'll be showing in a minute. And I really recommend, if you haven't been using the new kind of quick calculate distance, add to timing configuration, all in one step action that's being demonstrated here, just remember to click on that check mark so it comes up, put your name, set your icon, put it in a start finish category, and then set your icon, and then when you hit calculate distance, make sure to hit that check mark to add it to timing configuration. And so that's a one-click add. You don't have to go and put the distance in timing configuration. It's a really quick way to add additional points on the map that are going to be part of timing. It might be a timing point that you're doing for timing integration, but in this case, it's all of our actual exchange points that we're adding. And we need every exchange point put in for the relay, regardless of whether or not you're doing timing integration or not. This helps us set up those different legs that I was talking about in terms of our team management. The next part is the timing configuration. What's a little different about relay is this concept of setting up those legs. So again, that's the big reason why we have to have 2 courses. We have to have the standard and we have to have the relay course so that you can tell us where those legs start and end. And that's a big part of the configuration and the timing area. One of the questions that comes up often is, should I have team progress alerts every mile or every 5 miles? And what we've done is we've automated that a little bit. So based upon the distance, like marathons, you definitely want to kind of keep it at every mile. When we start getting into that longer distance relays, we actually change the progress alert cadence to be every 5 miles. And we've automated that for you, and I'll be demonstrating that today. But definitely for like those shorter relays, keep the progress alerts on every mile. You always want to keep the audio pace on. This is a question that comes up a lot. Like, do I really want that audio pace on every mile, even if it's an ultra? And the answer is yes. If you're running a 50 miler or even a 100 miler, that split pace every mile is very motivating. It's very important to those runners, and they need it. And then even in a relay, you got to remember they're only running 3-6 miles at a time. They need that split pace every mile. So don't turn the audio pace off for any of the relay stuff. And then finally, this is the key point. You have to tell us which one of those timing points in the leg. Okay, so that's the way to think about it, is where does the leg end? And so here, exchange 1 ends leg 1, and then the finish, and this is, we in our reviews, we get your courses each week, we get things enabled. I would say probably 80% of the time, the timers forget, like, where does the last leg end? Well, the last leg ends at finish. So make sure to click that exchange point that ends the leg, and you'll do that on the finish point. So the last leg ends on the finish, and you set that check mark for exchange point, and then we'll fill in the legs. Now, if some races like to call their legs different things, we have lots of different types of races out there. You can override, once you set that exchange point, you can override the leg name. You can call it whatever you want. So in triathlon, for example, we always override those leg names. We'll call it the swim leg, the bike leg, and the run leg. And so you just type over what's in there in the leg name, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. And that's actually displayed to the users as they set up their legs. And so if I'm doing a triathlon relay, I'm going to come in, I expect to see, oh, I'm doing the bike leg, oh, I'm doing the run leg. And you would want to make sure that configuration exists for them. So before we kind of dive into the mapping, just some things to really think about as you do this. This comes up a lot. Typically, especially in the ultra relays, but even in the regular marathon relays, there's a pretty big, especially in the bigger events, we get into Colfax, Denver, we get into Vermont. These are some really, really large relays that have 800 teams and so forth. So the exchange areas are very, very large, very managed in terms of like where the people are staging and stuff. And with respect to RaceJoy, this is very important. Remember, we're based on GPS placement, unless we're doing the time integration. But in general, you want to make sure that exchange point lines up with where the runner's entering into that zone, because this zone may be very large and runners may be leaving the zone somewhere else. And if you put the exchange point where they're leaving, that entering runner may never actually get to that point. So it's important to set up your exchange points where the runner's entering into that zone, and then that will end the leg for that runner. Again, remember, exchange points end the leg, and then don't worry about the next runner. The next runner, it's all about they're going to be running that next leg, and they'll be ending at that next point. If you have official signage, again, we always recommend, whether or not it's relay or standard, if you're doing signage and you're doing official signage out there, move your markers. Don't worry about the anomalies that we report out, like, hey, this point's at, GPS measurement 23.2, and we're seeing something different. Remember, those map anomalies are based on GPS measurement, which does not always line up with wheel measurement. And so if you are moving your points based upon an official marathon and a marathon relay, absolutely do that. That gives for the best experience for participants, because when they're seeing that signage, they're getting those alerts, and it makes them feel like it's all very connected and real. And so, yeah, if you're doing any kind of relays with a marathon, you would definitely want to move those markers to be based on the certified points. The last point to consider is something that we run into when we get into the more of the trail and the ultra relays. It's a real difficult problem to solve, but trying to put exchange points where you have some functioning cell, it just helps relay teams connect and get things working a little bit better. I will say, again, a huge caveat here. Remember that RaceJoy works completely offline. Everything is resident on the phone. They can actually be running in airplane mode. For the participants' perspective, they will get the experience. They'll get the off-course alerts. They can actually look and see their path. It's all on their phone and know that they're on course. The functioning cell is more about connection to other people. And so, if you're somebody on an ultra relay and you're waiting for somebody, getting some information about the fact that the person's getting close and that having a better area is a better place to put an exchange point. So just something to think about as you start moving into doing live tracking and ultra relays, and thinking about where you put your exchange points. So I'm going to dive out for a second. We had this, this is the main marathon, these ladies. This was just last weekend. They've been with us, I think, like 8 years now, a long time user of RaceJoy. They have a regular marathon and they have a relay, and they use RaceJoy. So I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about their example here. So again, we have a marathon relay course. This is actually their course here. Okay, so a couple things to kind of call out here in terms of like setting it up. Again, you had to have both the regular marathon course plus the relay course. So two things had to be mapped out. What's different, obviously, is on the relay course, we had to come in and add those exchange points. And so again, I would have just loaded the marathon course in, or asked us to copy it over for you on the back end. And then you'll just come in, you'll hit this little icon here, you'll drop a point, and this is where the exchange point's going to be. And then I'm just going to come in and just say, okay, this is my exchange 2. You want to set your category to be start finish. You want to set an icon. And then this is where you want to calculate your distance and add the marker. Before I do that, well, I'll go ahead and do that now. And again, this is a good point. That this is the reason why I chose this point to illustrate is they actually, the runners run through this point and they do a loop at the end of the on the top part of the course, and then they come back and they actually end the exchange at the end at the other point. So the timer would need to know that they actually are going to run through this, come around, and then actually end it at 14.81 miles. And so they would choose that second distance, and then this will add it all into the configuration all in one shot. And so if I come back here, I'll see I had probably have 2 points here now. Yeah, so I added, this was the existing one they had, and then I just added one, and if I were to save this, it would put it in the right sequence. So again, this adds it all automatically for you. You don't have to actually even come in here and look at this. It's just important to know that we do that. But the point is, you will always have to come back in here because that's where you're going to set your exchange points. The other thing I wanted to kind of illustrate about this one is, again, if this had been, again, just know that you have the satellite view, you know your exchange zones. Let's say this had been a very large relay with a huge parking area, and let's say the runners were actually staging in here, and then you have to ask yourself, where's the runner coming from to end the leg? In this case, they're coming from this direction. They go out this loop, they come back, they actually end this leg, come in here to the stage zone, and then the other runners would be leaving out of here. And so the question you would ask yourself is like, where should I put this? And again, it's as they enter the end of their leg is where you should be putting that point, and that will give the best measurement in terms of ending that leg for that runner. Because again, it's all about that stat they're looking for. That's how long it took me to run my leg, and we auto end. They don't have to hit a finish button or anything. That auto ends based on detection of them hitting that GPS point. And then if it's a timing point, which we'll be talking about later today, then it auto ends based on the timing data that they have. So just looking at the main marathon, I just kind of demonstrate adding an exchange point. It's very simple. You can use the satellite view to kind of dial in. You want to set the distance, you want to set the icon, you want to set the start finish, and like I said, you want to kind of place it based upon where they're ending that leg. So before I move into the ultra space and kind of slight changes there, any questions on the back end? Doesn't look like it. Okay, good. Great. So now let's talk about what's slightly different if you're doing an ultra distance relay, and what things you might have to consider that might be slightly different. Okay. One of the first things we run into is the fact that when you're doing ultra events, it's very difficult, especially when they're trail events, to have like a single path or single recording. It's often map construction is typically put together, putting lots of different pieces together and making for an overall experience. And so we often work with a lot of timers across the country, and we're here to assist you. So if you have like all the pieces and parts and you just need a way to kind of get them all into one contiguous path, that's what we need when you're ready to load in RaceJoy. So in a minute, you're going to see me demonstrating loading in a 100 miler. I'm not loading in a 100 miler as like all these different pieces and parts. I'm having to load in a 100-mile path that's contiguous, one GPX file or KML file, and then we'll do all the work for you. So we've done a lot of automation around setting up the timing configuration for these very long distances. We have talked in development about ways to let you load in different legs and different leg maps. That's something that's still in our thought process and backlog, but currently with RaceJoy, we need that single path, and we can help you put that together. The other thing that comes up, and again, just like with the regular marathon relays we talked about a minute ago, you do need to enable both the solo and the relay. So we do have solo 100 milers out there, and then we have the relay 8-person team. So again, make sure that you follow the same training. You enable both standard for the solo, and then you set up a relay as a separate path. And then that's when you turn on that relay processing type to set up us for doing teams and team management. So what's changes here is that for timing configuration, when we start getting in these ultra distances, we just find that the experience is better not sending out alerts every mile for those teams and those team alerts. It's just a little noisy. They're moving around a lot in the vans and everything, and just we find that the right cadence is letting people know when their team hits exchange points and or stations. Typically in the ultra relays, they start talking about more like stations and different names they use versus like exchange 1, exchange 2. And then the other thing we do is make sure to keep that audio pace on, because remember, especially for the relay, like they're only running maybe 5 miles, 6, maybe up to 10 miles a given interval, and then they're handing off. So for them, it's almost like little mini races within a race. And so they want to hear that every split pace. They want to know how they're doing and what their estimated time is to finish that leg. And so keep the audio pace on for those leg participants. And then again, we'll kind of automate the rest for you. We'll set up the progress alerts on the exchange points and then every 5 miles and also for your display board. With the display board, as you see here, and I'm going to be demonstrating, a lot of the ultra relays like to just focus their display board, their leaderboard, only into those exchange points and the stations. And so here's a good example of that, where they turn off all the progress except at the stations that the participants are going to be hitting. So let's take a look at Burning River and see how that works. And so I'm going to actually start fresh on this one. Again, Burning River has been with us. It's a 100-miler. It's in Ohio. Just beautiful course. Runs through all the parks of Ohio. And it's a really, really great organization that does all the trail running. They do all the trail running in Ohio. Great organization out there. So I'm going to actually take the raw contiguous path and do the whole thing from start to finish and show how easy it is to load in an ultra relay. So I have my path. I've built a path that's one contiguous 100-miler. I'm going to come in here, and then this often comes up. We do a lot of reviews, and we see, like, when we start getting the ultra distance, for some reason they start thinking, oh no, I gotta change the interval to be really big. And I think the reason why timers are thinking that is they're worried about what's going to display in both the app and also monitoring. And what I'm here to tell you today is don't worry about that. We are doing some things on the back end to make things look really good in the app and also monitoring. And so I'll show that to you in a minute. So just keep that interval to be every mile. Again, we want those audio alerts throughout every mile. And then we're going to kind of handle the cadence of progress alerts. We're going to handle the cadence of what we show on the progress board. And we're also going to handle the display of what we show for these ultra distances on the map and also in the monitor for you. Okay, so I've done the generation. And then if I come here, you'll see that, oh, wow, look, that's really cool. They've already set up and set my auto pace on, and they've got every 5 miles for, the progress alerts. So that's looking pretty good right now. Just need to set up my finish distance. Remember, you always have to set your finish distance. Okay. And so I'm pretty close now on this map. I've got a map. And so I could even, that would be the solo map. It's easy as that. And before I go and show the exchange points, the part I was just talking about in terms of monitoring, if you look at the monitoring view, so we kind of scale it really down in terms of what we're showing here on the monitoring view. And this is the same map that actually shows in the app when people are looking at the app. And so it's basically markers every 5 miles and also those exchange points that we'll be adding in a minute. And so it's not a very busy map, especially for a 100-miler. We'll be tracking people over. It doesn't give them the context of, within 5 miles of where they are on the course. And they do have the option to turn on those other layers in the app, but again, those are off by default. And what I mean by those other layers is that we're actually creating these other layers here. And so we're putting all those intermediate markers into these, what we call audio marker layers. And so these are the same layers that we use for geo message points that you may add if you add extra geo messages. If you put it in those layers, then they will not show in monitoring, and they will also not show by default in the app unless the user goes and turns on those layers and wants to see those additional markers on the map. So we kind of done a little bit of work there over the years to kind of simplify the setup for you. So then now we're going to come down to the exchange points. And so I know this race really well. He uses a relay station here. And so this, again, is an important discussion to have in terms of what we're doing here. So this is this Chestnut station. You see it's a big area where they have a lot of staging and stuff. And so again, we have to think about how this exchange is actually run. So they're actually going to run through here, going out, and that ends one of the legs, and then coming back much later in the day as they're ending, they're going to be coming. So it's a very simple process just to come in here and say, I'm going to set up 2 exchange points. And so this is them going out. set my icon, hit the calculate distance. Remember to hit the check mark, so that's on the way out. And then coming back. And that's coming back at the end of the, I don't know. Okay, so if I come in now and I look at the configuration, I should see, okay, good, that's helping me. It's definitely what I want. I definitely want an alert. I want the audio pace, and oh, that's nice. It goes to the progress board. That helps me out a lot. So the only thing I really have to do here is once I get all my exchange points in the map is just come in and say, oh, those points, those stations are actual exchange points. And remember, the last point is always the end of the last leg. So we do that, then we start getting, you know, again, this would have been actually, if I'd done all the other ones, this would have been numbered like 7 or whatever. But if for whatever reason, you know, I want to call it something else for them, that because I've done my participant guide, I've got all this documentation about how this relay runs, and you know, all the verbiage is, you know, something else called, you know, Chestnut 2 or whatever. You can call the legs that in the setup and just type over the names and save the configuration, and that will actually be what's displayed to the user in the app. And so let's take a look at what that means. So here's the Burning River event that happened in July. I'm a participant. I'm on the relay team. I'm on Team Joy. We'll tell you this right at the top of the screen. This event's over, so I can't really look at things as if it were live or anything, but I can kind of like behind the scenes go and look at my leg management. And so this is what the app looks like while they're actually doing the relay and it's live. They're able to self-manage. If I'm not feeling it and I get hurt, somebody else can come in and override and take over my leg and say that I'm going to run that leg. They're able to see their progress as they go through and actually see the actual stats. This is stats per leg. How long did it take that runner to do that leg, what their pace was, and overall team progress at that point. Our team pace is we're running about a 9:30. We're estimated to be finishing this in 23 hours. And so it gives them a really nice experience that they can kind of manage their team. And we're tying all those phones together based upon that, that team name. And I'll be talking about that in a minute when we get into registration. They can also self-manage if for some reason somebody on the team doesn't really want to use phones, they don't like phones, they don't want to run with phones. They can self-manage, and the team captain can kind of say, yeah, we finished that leg at that time, and enter in that time manually. So we give them a lot of tools for team self-management. And this is, of course, going to expand now with the time integration, and we'll be talking about that in a minute. But yeah, so it's really important to set up those legs, set them up to be what you have set up in your guide, what they're going to call them, and use those words, and then it just makes for a very happy team experience for them. Okay, and then I talked about one other thing I wanted before I jumped out. I'll get back to that. Talk about the monitoring. Again, let's actually look at the monitoring here. I had a window open. Just do full screen here. So this was the actual Burning River that happened in July, like I said. This is within the live view that the timers and the operations people were working and tracking and getting alerts on. I don't think they enabled the SOS. They could have enabled SOS alerts, and so those would show here also. So we have the SOS button in the app, which is really important for ultra events, and especially overnight events. You definitely want to enable that option. And then what I wanted to talk about here is the progress board. So the progress board is really, you know, a nice experience. And so notice what the timer did here. They just they really wanted to focus in on just the, you know, the stations. And so his progress board doesn't have any miles in it. It's all just straight stations. He's seeing his teams and how they're managing and getting through the event and how they're hitting the stations. You can leave this view up. It updates every 2 minutes and just kind of keep it off to the side. And it does provide for you know, kind of real-time information about what's happening with your teams. And then the other thing to note here, again, about how our team relay tracking works is in RaceJoy is that notice you have some gaps here. And what this is that for whatever reason, that particular team had runners that just, hey, I'm here to run. I don't want to think about technology. I'm checking out, and we totally embrace that. And they don't, you know, report their times during that period, and that's fine. If the team had self-reported, the time would have shown here. So this is an example where probably you know, out of those 8 team members, there was probably 1 or 2 people that just decided they didn't really want to use the technology. And so you'll have those gaps in the progress board. That's expected. And then again, if they self-report, then you know everything's filled out. So you can see here, the Sunday night's race, watch goes for a jog. They use the technology pretty heavily. Almost every station was hit. Okay. And then just real briefly on that SOS, if you get into ultra relays, you'll find that option under course options. Come down where you're adjusting your alerts, and this is where you can adjust your SOS, and you can configure the SOS, and this is where you will set up a contact list. So we email and we also send it to your monitoring dashboard. So it all can always shows in the monitoring dashboard, but you can also put in a distribution list of emails if you want to get those alerts. And we actually drop pins. And then you can also customize the messages that you make available to them for that SOS. So I'm not going to demonstrate that today, but definitely something, we have a webinar out there you might want to check out and get a little training on if you are doing any kind of ultra relays. Okay, moving on. So what's new? So obviously this summer, we've really been rolling out time integration with race day scoring. And I'm going to speak about what's important to understand about doing time integration with relays and our race day scoring platform. So there's really good training. Shelly's going to drop it into the chat right now that goes over everything about using race day scoring with RaceJoy for time integration. And what I'm here to speak to today is just the things that are specific to relay. And the point here is that, again, you don't have to use race day scoring to score races. If you're using other scoring platforms, but you want to have, actual timing alerts for your exchange points sent out through RaceJoy and being integrated with that leg experience that participants have, absolutely, this is a great tool. You just need to stream the data to RaceJoy, and we'll make the rest of it happen in the app. And so we've already had timers use us in relay events with time integration, and I'll be covering the nuances here today. The main thing is that we highly recommend that you think about putting your timing equipment out at the actual exchange locations. This makes for a really nice experience for the participants. The completion of those legs is now based on official RFID data versus like some GPS point where I think I hit this point and I think this is the end. And so their actual leg times are going to become much more accurate based upon official timings. And so again, we highly recommend that you put your equipment at the actual exchange locations. In race day scoring, you have to have a different scored event because we have to set up what we call relay processing. The same thing as I've covered today is true about RaceJoy. So that makes it easy. You have to have a different course in RaceJoy with a relay processing type set to relay, as I talked about. And then in race day scoring, you have to have a different scored event anyway. So it's really a one-to-one mapping between a scored event in race day scoring and a course that you set up in RaceJoy. And so it really kind of that part's pretty easy. Again, in the example I'm showing you here, this is where we're setting up the mapping of timing locations. And so in this particular race, I've set up a timing location for different exchange points and set up that mapping. Now, there are a lot of relays where you may have a timing point where you can actually end multiple legs. And so that's absolutely supported. In this example, I could have had the exchange actually used for all of them. And then I would have had occurrence 1 would have been for exchange 1, occurrence 2 would have been exchange 2, and occurrence 3 would have been exchange 3. So remember, based upon the training, what we are mapping to RaceJoy is a cumulative distance segment that says at this distance, this is where they are on the RaceJoy course. And so that's why we have this concept of timing location, and an occurrence helps us get to that cumulative segment distance that would map to an overall distance on the course. So you can definitely do mappings with multiple occurrences with the time integration, and it's all well supported for that. The caveat like you may be getting into some kind of like lap relay events and stuff like that. If you're doing any kind of lap events, currently we are not showing that it being easily enabled in race day scoring. There is, again, if it's a kind of a, I call it an easier lap setup, a way for us to do it still with RaceJoy. We just want you to send a ticket into raceday@runsignup.com with your configuration, and Avery and other people, Soren on the back end, can kind of talk to you about the different ways it could be done, and you can decide if you want to do it or not. So when you set up the relay event in race day scoring, one of the options you have, again, you have to set up a different scored event, is whether or not they're going to run with a common bib or use different bib. And this is something I wanted to make sure that is covered today. Both options are supported with respect to time integration and RaceJoy. In a minute, I'm going to be talking about how it works with the registration records, but just know that we do support both cases. The work has been done to make sure that those reads are getting processed and sent to RaceJoy correctly, and we can support both use cases. So as I said, we've done a lot of training since August, a lot of training materials out there. Shelly's giving you this link. If you want to look at how to do time integration between race day scoring and RaceJoy, just check out these training that we've done, and it'll really help you get going on the whole integration and how it works. So the next area I wanted to talk about is how does it work? You know, we talked about the fact that we're tracking teams in RaceJoy, we're letting them self-manage their legs, and we're tying things together. How does it all work with respect to the registration records that you're setting up, and how does it all work with bibs and so forth, okay? So remember in RaceJoy, what we're tracking is, phones, but we're tying those phones together by what we call a team identifier. And so everything in terms of how we work and tie those phones together is based on that team name, okay? So we sync from RunSignup all the data in. We will always bring those team names if they exist, and if those members are a part of a team. So that's the easy part. With respect to bibs, if you're not doing time integration, if you're just doing normal RaceJoy GPS and you're just doing a straight GPS thing, you don't need to worry about the bib. It's important to understand we're tracking phones. The phones are tied together based on that team name, 3 blondes and a ginger. It has nothing to do with the bibs. So the bibs are completely not anything that we're using to tie together teams or do anything, and whether or not they're using different bibs or same bibs and all that kind of stuff. So just know that if it's a straight GPS type RaceJoy experience, we don't care about the bib. It's just an additional identifier that helps identify people, and they can look up people based on their identifiers. So again, those team names are what tie the phones together, and it provides those participants with what I demonstrated a minute ago with this kind of leg area, and I get to see all the people that are part of my team, and I can see that Kimberly and Russell and Johnny, yeah, they're all on that. And we do get in situations where there's teams that are the same. We get in like Colfax Marathon, there's 800 teams, and there's like 3 different versions of that the big pharmacy company out there that does their event, and or maybe 10 different teams, and they're like, instead of coming up with something creative, they all call themselves the same team name, but just 1, 2, 3, 4. And so they do, it does get confusing sometimes for the participants that they don't look for their name or their actual team name correctly. But this is nice because they're looking at their leg manager, they're seeing somebody, and they're like, hey, you're not a part of my team, and then they can kind of self-manage and figure it out before the event. And it does provide for this team progress stats I was talking about. So when we send out progress alerts, we're not sending it out that Russell Link is at exchange one. We're saying that the team name is at this exchange. This team is at this kind of pace. And so this team is estimated to be able to finish this main marathon in a 3-hour marathon, 3:53 marathon they're running. This is from this weekend. And so the team progress is what we're reporting. It's not the individual progress. We're tying that team together based on that team name. So if you're doing time integration, then this is where the bib does matter. Okay, so now we really start moving the needle. We're doing a lot more with information, not only the GPS data, but now we're mixing in official RFID data, and we need to have those bibs identify correctly the team members so that we know where to put that progress, where to put the information, okay? And again, we support both use common and use different bib, but it's important to understand and think about as a timer working with your race directors, how are they managing bibs and how are things looking? And I'll be talking about that in detail right now. So it's really important to understand how our sync works here. We always, always, always take the bib from the registration record first. So that's the first thing we go for. If we don't find a bib on the participant's registration record and a group bib number exists, so that's something that we'll show on the screen in a minute, then that will now become the bib that will associate to that particular person. Okay, so we have Michael, Soren, and James, we're all on a team, and we have registration records for Michael, Soren, and James, and we go to get those registration records and there's no bib. If there's a team identifier, that will actually be like 1001, then we'll actually put that 1001 on all three Michael, Soren, and James's records in RaceJoy, and it all works really well. So basically the best practice here is just, whether or not you're using common or different, we just, even if you're using common, you could have signed 1001 to all three of our registration records, and then it also works. And so you don't have to rely on that group number. So we'll definitely work both ways, but we just want you to know that at the end of the day, whatever's on the registration record is what we take. We'll only override it with what's on the group record if we don't have anything on the participant record. So what does that look like in terms of two examples? So here's one race. This one here, I think was actually, this is actually Maine, yeah. No, this is Burning River, sorry, Burning River, yeah, Burning River. He likes to run he scores based on different bibs. He uses different bibs. He doesn't use the group bib number at all. He is set up and scoring to use different bibs. And so this is the way it would look at RunSignup in the registration sync. You see at the top point here, we have no group bib number demonstrated, and then all these people actually were on the same team, and they had different bib numbers. And so, the different bib numbers would come into RaceJoy, and everything would work fine based upon those identifiers, and he would be setting up scoring based upon using different bib numbers, and it all works. Okay, so that's the different bib use case and how it would look in registration. The other one here is, I think this is actually from Maine, also different event. Yeah, this is where there's no bib number assigned to the team members, and you see that that's blank. And the 1002 actually got assigned to all the people coming into RaceJoy. So both Rebecca and Bill, in this case, if you looked them up in RaceJoy, you would see a bib number 1002 on their records. When the team, all the team management alerts were, with timing integration, would be working off that 1002. Now, important, could I have put that 1002 and actually had that on the registration records for both Bill and Rebecca? Absolutely. And so you can have that, and then it all works also. So either way it works, but one's probably a little bit more ensuring everything's going to be there. The other one's kind of relying on this being there and the members being a part of that group. So a little bit of complication there. Just wanted to make sure I covered it in terms of bib management. Any questions, please feel free. If there's anything confusing about this, throw it into the chat channel and we can take a moment to socialize that. So I've gone through some material here today. We have a support team. So as always, just send anything about RaceJoy, just send your tickets into info@racejoy.com. The Daves and Kevin are back there to help and assist with anything you're doing with setting up. We talked about maybe even like putting legs together for an ultra relay and so forth. But any questions, please feel free to throw them in there right now, and I can cover it if there's anything. I think we're good. So this recording, of course, will be available for review afterwards and sent to all of our attendees. And if anybody on the line, looking through our timers, are in Florida, please know that our thoughts are with you as you prepare for the storm in the south So hopefully you guys will get through it. So thanks again so much for your time today. Thank you for attending our Timer Tip Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing you next time.